It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for being with us today. By the way, this broadcast will be available up at conduitnews.com just as soon as we get off the air. And don't forget to get the podcast. We divide the podcast up into hour 1, hour 2. You can find those at iTunes, SoundCloud, and again at conduitnews.com. Folks, this November, we've got several issues on the ballot here in the state of Arkansas, and we've gone over many of them, but there's 5 total that you got to know about. But let's just talk about the 5th one. Issue number 5 is an increase in the minimum wage, and it would increase the Arkansas minimum wage up to $11 per hour by 2021. Right now, it's $8.50. January 1st of 2019, so January of next year, small businesses would have to pay their employees a minimum of $9.25 per hour. The next year, 2020, $10. The year after that, 2021, $11. Currently, the minimum wage is $8.50, and the highest state minimum wage currently is $11.50 in the state of Washington. Joining us now to talk a little bit more about this, we have the Heritage Foundation's Rachel Greszler. Rachel, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
What are your thoughts on this concept of the minimum wage and the benefits or the pros, the cons? What does Heritage think about this?
Well, the positive, of course, the reason that people would like to push for a higher minimum wage is putting more incomes into workers' pockets. But the negative side of that, of course, is that it's a higher cost for employers, and so they can't employ as many people, so it reduces jobs significantly. I was really interested in this proposition in Arkansas because the county that I live in Maryland, actually passed a similar 30% minimum wage hike over a year ago now, and the Democratic county executive vetoed it because of the findings that they did from a review that showed it actually would have caused 1 out of every 3 low-wage workers to lose their jobs if you had that 30% increase in the minimum wage, and there were all sorts of other losses that would have happened for the county as well, lower incomes as a whole for everybody, lower county revenues, higher county costs, welfare costs. So on net, this was really a negative thing that would have been for our county, and even a wealthy county, just outside the D.C. area, decided not to increase their minimum wage.
Wow. Yeah, that is very useful information, and I hadn't thought about the aspect of, once the jobs, dry up, once employers can't hire as many or maybe even have to lay off some people, well, now they're going to go on welfare. And so this, that's going to be more money to the government and these social programs. And now, speaking of the government, though, I mean, to me, there's kind of a perverse incentive, though, for minimum wage, because if you can tax somebody, at $8.50, obviously, if you tax them at $11, then the government is now seeing an increase in revenue as well, right?
Yes, so they see a slightly higher revenue for those individuals that have the higher income, but actually some of those individuals will still qualify for welfare costs from whatever, if it's the state government, the federal government, the local level. At least that's what was found in the study in Montgomery County. And then those individuals who have lost their jobs entirely qualify for significantly higher welfare costs. So on net, I think the government is still going to come out behind in this because you have fewer workers and you have businesses that either shut down entirely or reduce their operations significantly enough that it's lower revenues coming into the government.
This was put on our ballot because of, it was a signature effort. We have, right to gather enough signatures. I think this year you needed, something like 86,000, signatures to get something like this on the ballot. But the problem is Arkansas has just come out of increasing our minimum wage over the last, 3 or 4 years anyway. The people of Arkansas voted for an increase last time. And I have a feeling that they're going to do it again this time if we don't, get out in front of this and educate folks as to what this really means. Most people who are making minimum wage now, they see a law like this and they think, this is a no-brainer for me. I'm going to directly benefit from this. And so, Rachel Greszler from Heritage Foundation, is that the case? Does this help them in the long run?
No, as I said, up to 1 out of every 3 of those low-wage workers could lose their jobs, and then just the prospects that this creates for younger workers and less educated workers to even find a job to begin with. It's so important for young workers to be able to get some experience, to get their foot in the door. And when the lowest available job is $15 an hour, employers are less willing to take a risk or to have those lower education younger workers come in. They're going to get the higher skilled ones, and then you have these people that are just starting back, behind the game and aren't able to get that experience that they need to begin with. So it's really important, not just for the people that earn a minimum wage for their lifetime, which actually, only about 6% of the labor force is earning the minimum wage. It's really more of a issue about younger people that are just starting out than it is for somebody that their entire lifetime they're going to be earning the minimum wage. There's not that many people that are in that situation.
I'm really glad that you brought that up. Entry-level positions, trying to, get their foot in the door, trying to learn skills, because that's what this is really about. And anytime, we talk about the minimum wage, I think it's a really good opportunity to tell people that, you're basically paid in a free market, and obviously I would like more of a free market than we have, but in a free market, you're going to be paid what you're worth, the value of your skill set, right? So, and this is offensive in this day and age to say this, but, handing a bag of food out of a drive-through window is something that a lot of people can do. A lot of people have that skill, but not as many people, have the skill to, do brain surgery. And so you've got, and that's those are, really far on the spectrum, but that's really what this is about. And so I really like what you say about, well, we need young people to be able to get these entry-level positions. Can you show up to work on time? Can you do these tasks? And you're not going to make as much, as somebody who has more valuable skills, but that's a good thing because you're going to now have incentive to go out and, learn more information, make yourself as valuable in the marketplace as you can.
Exactly. Having a job is a benefit to the worker beyond their paycheck. It's the skills they learn in that. And if we keep pushing the minimum wage higher and higher, you keep crowding out those jobs. You go to McDonald's, at least where I live today, and a lot of it is touchscreen now, and you order everything from a computer as opposed to a person. And so if we want people to be able to have these entry-level jobs, and we don't want everything to shift to automation, then you need to allow employers to pay people for the value of what they're contributing, instead of saying if you only have $7 an hour worth of value, you can't have a job at all. It shouldn't be that we put a floor and say if you can't produce $15, you don't deserve a job, period, because that education component is so important.
Yeah, and what does it do to the employee who has, been at a business for several years, started making, let's say in Arkansas, $8.50 an hour, but, proved, himself or herself, and now, this person is making $11 an hour. Okay, they're making $11 an hour, or they're making more, and now all of a sudden, somebody that got there last week, like a week before January of 2020 or 2021, is now going to be making the exact same as them. I mean, psychologically, that's got to affect the hardworking employee who's put in the time.
Exactly. And it might be that any employees that are just slightly above the minimum wage, the employer's going to have to shift things around in their total compensation. Yes, they can cut some jobs on the lower end, but they might also have to reduce benefits. They might cut back hours so that the person that's already above the minimum wage no longer gets offered 40 hours, but only 30 or 35. So they're going to see the negative impacts of this as well, and that's exactly what a colleague of mine found, looking at what happens if we raise the federal minimum wage to $15 an hour. It impacts people well above those that are earning $15 an hour today. And that study that my colleague James Shirk actually did a couple of years ago was quite interesting. I was looking it up because he found that Arkansas and Mississippi have the lowest relative incomes and would be the hardest hit by a big increase in the minimum wage like this. And so I know you're not looking at a $15 minimum wage there today, but even $11, a 30% increase in a state that has a relatively lower income compared to the rest of the U.S. could have a potentially really big impact on employment and just, total, even talking about the level of revenue that the government collects, shifting businesses out of state or shutting down completely. Just a lot of spillover effects beyond looking at what could the positive impact be for this set of workers that would take home higher incomes.
Is there, we're talking with Rachel Greszler from the Heritage, she's a fellow at the Heritage Foundation. I guess, this is a very popular idea with the left. And this may be, I guess there's a question where, we feel free to speculate or not speculate. But I think there are some on the left that genuinely believe that, this is the best thing. Raising the minimum wage is the best thing. Now, then you can get in the argument with them. Okay, well, if $11 is good, why not 15? Okay, why not 100? Okay, and then it's like they don't ever want to have that argument. So there are people on the left with good intentions. I think they're wrong. I think they're genuinely, honestly wrong. But is there another motivation here? I mean, I mentioned earlier you've got the increase in government revenue, tax revenue, but then again, with the welfare, you were saying it's still going to be worse for the government in terms, according to some information. And so, is there some other motive here? Is it about political power? What do you think?
I think it's a populist move. Everybody wants workers to have higher wages, to be able to take home more pay, and Democrats and Republicans want that. We want incomes to grow. On the left, it's just a push that, hey, if the business isn't going to do it on its own, then we want to force them to do this. But I think that they come out and publicly support this because it's a way that they can, politicians can find something that forces employers to pay individuals more. But behind the scenes, you will find liberal politicians that will admit that $15 an hour or whatever these minimum wage increases that we're talking about are not a good move. And you even have, President Obama's Council of Economic Advisors, Alan Kruger, said that a $15 minimum wage is a risk not worth taking. Other liberal economists have said that these are, quote, extremely risky in job markets where young and less educated workers already have difficulty finding jobs. Such mandates would make it even harder. And so people recognize this across the spectrum, liberal, conservative alike, but I think it has just become kind of a rally cry of liberals, something that they can talk about on the stand, something that can become a voting issue to try and say, hey, we can increase your incomes basically by fiat instead of giving you the tools, making you become more educated and more productive so that you can earn a higher income of your own accord. We can do it just by signing this legislation.
Yeah. I really agree with that. We got to get out and we got to educate, especially here in Arkansas. If I was a betting man, I would say, yeah, I would bet that this was going to pass. But I hopefully with, information, from Rachel Greszler, the Heritage Foundation, and as well as, other people just out there talking and taking this information and saying, hey, this may be a populist idea, but it's not actually going to do what they say it's going to do. It's actually going to be bad for our economy in the long run. And that's the only way we're going to defeat this thing here in Arkansas. So Rachel Greszler, I really appreciate you coming on this morning. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
All righty. Folks, we're going to take a break. The telephone number, 870-275-9799. Feel free. You can sound off on the Facebook page. That is facebook.com/Conduit News. What do you think? Issue number 5, increasing the minimum wage from $8.50 to $9.25, $9.25 to $10, $10 to $11. Let me know. I personally think it's a terrible idea. And Rachel Greszler there telling us really the same thing. It's not a good idea. Back in just a moment.
If you believe the Second Amendment protects your right to defend your home with a firearm, where do you turn if the government confiscates your gun? To the courthouse. The Founding Fathers created your Seventh Amendment right to a civil jury to protect your freedoms. The courthouse is where you fight the overreaching hand of government. And the Brad Hendricks Law Firm is where the fight starts. Call the Brad Hendricks Law Firm at 501-221-0444. The Brad Hendricks Law Firm in Little Rock, standing ready using the Seventh Amendment to protect your Second Amendment rights. Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, You believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
The Washington Times reporting yesterday that nothing new, essentially. Witnesses are sticking to stories as FBI digs into Brett Kavanaugh for the 7th time. They're basically saying, yeah, no corroboration, but, and you know what? This is all predictable. I mean, we all know this. What did the left say? They said,
well, the White House is mismanaging the investigation. The White House is micromanaging the investigation.
That's what they say. And it's just ridiculous because I'm just Joe likes the voice there. It's all predictable. Look, the American people, you guys out there, we got to put up with a few more days of this. I hope that it's only a few more days. I hope the FBI comes out and says, "Hey, listen, we've done the investigation, everything's fine," or they don't come to a conclusion. I mean, we know this. So nothing's going to satisfy. This is a delay tactic, right? But hear me out. Hear me out. Jeff Flake and the Democrats are going to fall into their own nets here. Hear me out. They're setting this net. They're doing the delay. They're going to fall into their own nets. The media is going to fall into their own nets. They're setting for Trump and the rest of, and they're going to fall into their own nets. People are sick of this. They have overplayed their hand. Moderates and even Democrats have their stomachs turned by what they did to Brett Kavanaugh. You can't just throw out allegations. It does look coordinated. The fact that we now know that Christine Blasey Ford was never told by her attorneys that the Judiciary Committee was willing to fly out and interview her, and she finds out in the middle of testimony. That's why Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton has said lawyers, this is from Politico, Senator Dianne Feinstein's office will now be investigated to determine whether it leaked a confidential letter from one of Brett Kavanaugh's accusers. Cotton also said lawyers recommended to Christine Blasey Ford by the Democrats will face a Washington, D.C. bar investigation for telling her that Senate Judiciary Committee staffers would not travel to California to interview her about her sexual assault allegation. Okay, so correction, judiciary staffers, not the entire Judiciary Committee. But anyway, that's my I misspoke there. That's quote, they have betrayed her, Cotton said on Face the Nation, CBS News. She has been victimized by Democrats on a search and destroy mission for Brett Kavanaugh. And he's exactly right here. There should be a Barr investigation because that's clearly they wanted the spectacle, they wanted the theater, they wanted an Anita Hill moment because this was not about finding what the facts are. It's about opposing Trump's Make America Great Again agenda. It's about opposing getting a solid 5-4 majority on the court, and sometimes a 6-3. But that's what it is. It's about opposing that at all costs, and it's about, they know Ruth Bader Ginsburg's not going to stay alive forever or not going to be able to be on the court forever. They know this. They know it could be not 1, not 2, but 3 Supreme Court justices. And they know that they don't get anything that they want legislatively very often. That's a landmark situation or landmark accomplishment, so they've got to have the courts to do it. That's what this is. And so they're trashing this. They're trashing Brett Kavanaugh, and it is, but they're essentially, what I think? I think Jeff Flake doing what he did, I think they just, because there are reports now saying that they did have the votes, right? But now they're saying, well, this is going to really help, maybe shore some things up and that sort of thing. I think it's just going to be worse for the Democrats because they're going to continue this. People are sick of hearing about this. There are people who are, I've heard from people who are Democrats who are so upset because the economy is doing good and it's clear that the party, they're going to vote Republican down the ticket because of what's going on. And again, it's this. It's the fact that, and we talked about this in the first hour, the media and D.C. politicians, they still think they can campaign and run this country like it's the 1990s, and nobody's going to find out, their doublespeak and their hypocrisies and everything else. But it's not. It's not the 90s, not the early 2000s. You can't govern the country that way anymore, and people are sharing the information. That's why the social media people are, trying to now censor what we can and can't do. Because the stranglehold that the media had as being the arbiters of information is now over. And they don't know what to do about that. And that's why you're having, I think, the walk away movement with the Democrats walking away. People have been Democrats their whole life. It's because of the free exchange of ideas on the internet. It's because of the fact that you can go look at the video of Joe Biden saying FBI investigations don't reach conclusions. And people say, wow. Mainstream media would have never, if you didn't have the internet, you'd have never heard that video on CNN or anywhere else of Joe Biden basically making the modern-day Democrat Party look like a bunch of hypocrites. You'd have never heard of that video. But we all know it now because of the free exchange of ideas on a free, open internet. And it needs to stay that way. And that's why, on Twitter, Facebook, and everywhere else, they are very worried right now about the they're basically just begging for regulation in no uncertain terms. And I don't necessarily think regulation is the answer, but at some point we have to decide, we have to decide what is public, in terms of free speech and in terms of, the internet, and how do you marry the internet with a public sidewalk? You know what I mean? How do you marry the two? I know Facebook's private and everything else. I'm not really, but there's definitely antitrust laws you can look at. The telephone number, 870-275-9799. Other big news today, we have late Sunday, trade ministers from the United States, Mexico, and Canada reached a new deal to revamp the North American Free Trade Agreement. The new pact, which is called the U.S.-Mexico-Canada Agreement, is a major step toward completing one of Trump's signature campaign promises, according to Politico, and gives the president a concrete policy win to tout on the campaign trail this fall. So, anyway, that's going to probably be in the headlines a lot throughout the day today. I want to remind you that tomorrow on the program, we're excited. We're going to be talking with Mr. Joey McCutcheon, Fort Smith attorney, He is going to be talking about issue number 1 on the ballot and how terrible it is. It's terrible, terrible, terrible tort reform. I mean, like, really, really bad stuff. And we've talked about that before. Also, Democrat Susie Epperson will be on the program. Yeah, we'll tell you about, see what she has to say. She's running as the Democrat against Republican State Representative James Sturch. Now, the fact that we're having James Sturch's opponent on the program, who's a Democrat, is going to drive the, Marble Palace establishment crazy because, we had Mark West on a couple of times who's a libertarian for governor, and they lose their minds because somehow in some parts of the Republican Party, not everywhere, but in some parts of the Republican Party of Arkansas, they're afraid of conversations. They're afraid of mere conversations. And that's not who the party used to be. They used to welcome debate and ideas. Okay, that's all the time we have for today. Arkansas, thanks for starting the beginning of your week with us here, the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. I hope your week is a prosperous one. Thank you for listening. Arkansas, be safe.